Hello and welcome today to Celebrity Customer Experience Riffs with me, Jill Raff, where we riff on anything and everything from employee experience to customer experience, because I truly believe and obsessed with that fact of employee experience influencing and creating outstanding customer experience. So, those of you who have heard me before and follow me know that I am really strong on starting with the inside, right? The inside out, the employee experience to customer experience. So I'm particularly interested and excited about today's guest because he kind of turns that on its head. Um, you will see that he is creating something brand new where I don't want to give it away just yet, but the idea of the employee experience changes quite a bit. So I'm going to bring in our guest today, Nipun Sharma. Hi,
Hello.
welcome.
Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, of course. I'm super excited. You are doing really, really fascinating things, really changing up the industry. Basically, I will kind of just give everyone a little background and then we'll dive in. So, Nipun Sharma is the co founder and CEO of SJW Robotics, a fully autonomous quick service restaurant that cooks delicious made to order meals. Get this, with no on site employees, utilizing advanced machine learning and data science. Super cool. Nipun has over 17 years of experience in the restaurant and food manufacturing industry, both as an entrepreneur and COO of public restaurant chains franchised across the world. Nipun has run over 10 restaurant brands across multiple cuisine types, both QSR and full service restaurant chains, and 2 food production plants. He's the graduate of McGill University and began his career in investment banking and private equity on Wall Street. So, very eclectic, very interesting. And having run numerous restaurant chains and expanding them worldwide, Nipun is now creating one of the first fully autonomous robotic restaurants set to launch in partnership with the Compass Group. Super, super exciting. So we have a lot to break down there. Um, Again, thank you so much for joining me. I'm just really, it's so fascinating. So let's start at the beginning. You can tell us a little bit about your background, your journey, and because I guess the question is, was food and the food industry always your jam? Um, a little double entendre there, but at the same time, you started in finance. So give us a little background.
Yes, I actually come from 4 generations of chefs and restaurateurs, and I was the first non-chef in the family, I guess. And also, I'm colorblind, so there's no chance I'm going to be cooking anything for you. And so when I went into the finance field, my dad was actually really happy that, let's get out from this industry. It's tough business,
Mm,
easier ways to make money in life. So of course, I went to finance, did the investment banking tours in New York and stuff. But when I was living in London, England, I got reconnected to Indian food. I was born and raised in India. And I found the Indian food in England was better than Indian food in India. And that kind of surprised me.
uh,
And especially, I'm talking 17 years ago, the frozen Indian food in grocery stores, that blew my mind, the quality and everything
Amazing.
else. So I
Yeah.
got pretty curious, like, how do you mass manufacture Indian food? How come there's no chain of Indian restaurants in North America? And taking all these pieces together, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to leave my job. I'm going to start an Indian QSR. So I moved to Canada, to Toronto. Got some of my old employees of my dad from India on work visas, and tried to come up with a chain to make Indian food scalable. And that's how I kind of started my journey. And I realized after 2 or 3 years, I made a big mistake. It's just the toughest thing in the world to do. And I learned the business from the ground up. Got some support and guidance, of course, from my dad. But in the end, I realized this is far more difficult than I ever imagined.
Mm,
But I learned a lot. And thankfully, a big private equity firm came in and bought me out at one point. At that point, I realized that, I'm done with this. I'm going to go back into finance. But, I had my taste of the industry. I liked the good parts. I managed the bad parts, and I was getting better at it. Thankfully, I got convinced by a public company in Canada to join them and start another chain of restaurants. And that started a weird path for me, to be honest. Over the last 17 years, I've done every cuisine type you can think of, from steakhouses to vegan concepts and chains that have expanded all over the world. And increasingly, because of my personal shortcomings, I started designing kitchens that could be easy for guys like me to run, make them smaller, easier onboarding, less food wastage, and taking best practices from one cuisine type and applying it to the next. It became a really weird and interesting journey. And I think over the last few years, we started seeing, even before COVID came in, labor started becoming an issue. And I've been closing restaurants all over the world just because people weren't there to satisfy the customers. The lineup of customers, the demand is there. And in many parts of the world, labor just doesn't exist. And it gets even more acute for the quick service industry. This is functional food. This is takeout. This is delivery. And it's a smaller footprint where people want good quality, but people demand good value because you're not really getting an ambiance of a full service restaurant. So this industry, I think, was getting more pressure from labor. And one of my last few projects in the industry was actually creating a grocery, a restaurant inside a grocery store. And I created a concept really based on my personal experience of the 80-20 rule. 80% of your sales come from 20% of your menu. What if I take the best of everything, the butter chicken, the pad thai, the burrito bowl, and create a concept called Global Bowls from across the globe? And we did
Global
that.
what?
It's called Global Bowls from across the globe, and all different cuisine types. And because it was in partnership with a grocery store, all of a sudden, we don't have the challenges of a typical restaurant. This is a captive audience, real estate that's already there, and a company that already has a food infrastructure in place. And grocery businesses have been evolving and becoming more interesting, but they don't actually have a restaurant experience inside them for me to order food. So we brought that to the table, and that's when I learned again how hard it is for labor. And one of my I think 3 months before we opened, I put a posting for somebody that's trained on a walk. Um, and nobody applied for the job. It's been over a year. Nobody's applied for the job since. So we've been
Wow.
fumbling around using the walk in that place. So this is the point I started realizing that it's hard to find specialized labor. Again, in a quick service environment, it's infinitely harder.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, okay, robotics automation. There's got to be some better ways to do this. And I started contacting every robotic food company in the world. I'm like, listen, man, I want to buy your robots, make my life easier because this is getting very difficult. And as we met these companies, we realized a lot of them didn't really have any value in my ecosystem. For me, robotics automation means multitasking, high speed, high volume.
Mm.
And if you just have a simplistic robotic hand that's moving things, a few inches, it doesn't really move the needle in my universe. So that's when I kind of gave up on able to find something that's useful. But coincidentally, I met my co-founder. My co-founder, Brian Walker, has spent his entire career in the robotics universe for the world's largest automotive parts manufacturer. He literally builds robotic factories for a living. So
Mm.
when I met Brian, I'm like, Brian, I'm trying to do this. I had this general idea of drawing on a napkin. And that started our journey into building something like this. So initially, it was meant to solve a small problem for me. We realized, well, if it can solve my problem, we can solve many other people's problems. And the conclusion we came to as we went down the journey was automating a part of an existing kitchen that's designed for human beings is not going to be very useful because we don't design kitchens for efficiency. We design them for humans so they don't hurt themselves inside. And using the limitations of a human being, that's how our kitchens are done. So making
Mm.
that slightly better was not going to make anybody's life infinitely better. So we're like, let's reimagine a kitchen. Let's start from the beginning. Let's raw materials and finished products. How do we go from A to B in the most efficient possible way without being limited to the human being movement? And that's what we developed in the end. We developed a fully autonomous back of the house that could take advantage of advanced automation, data science to really make a big impact in meat to order meal services. And since the back of the house is fully automated, we could put a sleeve on top. It becomes a vending machine that could be a standalone QSR, or it could be the back of the house replaced in a full service restaurant. So that's the long answer to your short question.
Wow. You kind of gave away the store there, but uh, uh, we're going to break down some of that a little more. I hope everyone, if you need to go, this is being recorded, so go back and listen to it again because a lot of amazing, fascinating uh, information and the journey that led you to that. One of the things, in fact, is I think why we connected so much. So we met, just a little background for everyone. We met, we were both speakers at the Mid America Restaurant Association, Mid America Restaurant Expo and Conference through the Ohio Restaurant Association in September. And it was really fascinating. Both from the perspective of EX and CX and where the automation ties into that. But I think one of the reasons we really connected is that diversity. And what you touched on is how you had so many experiences across industries, across countries, across continents. And you took all of that experience and said, let's pick the best from here and the best from there. Well, we did that in this industry, but why is it not being applied in the food industry? And of course, it can be applied. And in doing so, you have created this innovation, this new product, this new way to solve a huge problem that's going on. In the food industry. And similarly, I've worked across different cultures, same thing, different cultures, different industries, different continents. And I think that's what part of what connected us, but part of, I think, why we have something different to offer the market, because you're bringing a fresh perspective that's not just a single lane industry viewpoint of what's always been done. It's actually pulling and pooling the best of everything. But I just really love the way you have taken this and innovated something completely different, as we're, in this whiplash world of innovation and electronics and technology. Gosh, okay, so let's back up a little bit. You talked about how now you've created this fully autonomous restaurant, and explained a little bit of kind of the fire of what lit you, to do this and what inspired you. And so I'm just curious, about the evolution really of the industry, the QSR versus full service, and how are you finding, the comparison between the two? And I think one of the things that really you've nailed, and something that we talked about in Ohio, is how is it solving the staffing problem that right now we're seeing, particularly because of the pandemic, is really a big problem. And I think particularly in the QSR world, it's easier to do that, but not as much in the full service world. So talk to me a little bit about how you see what's happening, how we address the staffing problem, and how does it kind of bridge those different parts of the industries and the evolution of that.
Yeah, see, in my perspective, there's two things happening. I think there's a generational shift in the kind of jobs people are willing to do. I think a generation ago, for a lot of young kids, the first job was McDonald's. Those kids are starting Facebook now. And then there was people of a certain socioeconomic background that would work in, fast food chains. A lot of them have many more interesting options today, be it driving an Uber, working at Amazon, things we didn't have a generation ago. So from the gig economy to all these new ways to work, I think I've given people a lot of options. And I don't think anybody really wakes up in the morning and says, I'm really going to want to work in a fast food kitchen. It's nobody's choice to be an employee in these places. You do it because you may not have a better choice. So I think that's a generational shift happening in that. At the same time, the demand for food has gone up. The quality of food has gone up. Fast food used to be a bad word, but now the quality of food coming out from quick service restaurants is as good as it gets. It's organic, it's healthy, it's local, and all that good stuff. So the standards of food quality have infinitely gone up because people are very demanding, and we increasingly cook less at home. So one of the biggest increases in sales of the last few years or every restaurant has really come from delivery. And delivery is expensive. It's expensive because you don't make money from it, from 25-30% charges. And the delivery companies are tech companies, so they can lose billions while they figure it out. So we're in this interesting flux of how do we meet this growing demand, and how is the industry going to evolve. So from our perspective, quick service meets a functional need. I need my food delivered. I want to eat it while driving, while watching Netflix, while working. Give me something to my personal standards. I want it now, and I want to pay only so much. When we look at minimum wage going up in California and other places, it's great. But food is about 25-30% of our total costs. There's only so much people will pay for your food, because your labor costs or occupancy costs are going up. If you can buy something for $1, you can't sell it for 10. People understand that food should not cost that much, especially in the quick service universe. So for that part, we realize that automation is key. We have our restaurants open for 12, 14 hours a day. We get a 1 hour of lunch rush, 1 hour of dinner rush. So there's an inefficiency built into our model. So about 50 years ago, when labor didn't cost much, Steve Jobs didn't teach us how to appreciate good-looking buildings. Rent didn't cost much. We could play that game. But over the years, as margin has been shrinking, and that needs to be addressed. So automation comes in. How do we create a restaurant which doesn't need to staff for 14 hours, but can generate that volume during lunch hours and rush hours? So I think for that part of the world, automation is inevitable, because you're delivering value, you're taking away a giant chunk of inefficiency from labor costs and from occupancy costs. So if somebody can deliver on that, and we're seeing a lot of movement in that direction, those people will win. So for example, in our current restaurant, I can sell food for half the price of my competition and make a bigger profit margin than them, because we have about 40% of inefficiency built into the existing model. So if you can deliver value to the customers, they're going to love you for it. On the other side, I think the full service, the family dining restaurants, the Michelin star restaurants, they're going to become increasingly more important, because in addition to good food, you're providing good ambiance, good value for your personal satisfaction. This is where you're going to celebrate with your family, with your colleagues. You go for a fantastic experience in a beautiful restaurant, get really great service. You're paying for a lot more than just the food. And increasingly, I think people are going to value that more. You're going to see more talented chefs creating better Michelin star restaurants. For the first time in history, Toronto, where I live in Canada, is finally rated by Michelin. We have a bunch of Michelin star restaurants for the very first time ever in our country. And so you're going to see a lot more movement and talent going to create that experience for customers. So I think splitting the on-site full service ambiance will get better, will attract better talent, will provide better wages, will provide a better experience for customers. And the functional food, which is basically about roughly half the total universe of dining out, I think will require a lot more automation. Yes, automation can make an impact on full service too, but it's not that urgent at this stage, in my opinion.
Well, I love it. You just said functional food. I mean, you don't hear that expression very often, and it's probably your own creation. I think that just speaks volumes. I mean, functional food. Think about it. I think QSR is completely about functional food. Like you say, now there's healthy options and there's all of that, but clearly it differentiates itself very much in the needs that they're serving. You talked, I think the key thing, some of the highlights is the demands of the customers, right? Speed, price, convenience. It's functional, right? Form follows function from my design background. That's a big one. And wow, I mean, I remember when I first heard you speak. So I attended a panel that you were on with three other gentlemen about automation. And being an EX to CX person, I thought, what, they're getting rid of their people? Like, what do you mean? It's all about connection with another human being to create that experience, because it's not always just about the food, right? Like, I know everyone I speak to says, I would much rather have great service and, and okay food, good food, certainly not bad food, than amazing food and really bad, crappy service or negative experience. But I think the key is, the difference is what you talked about, is that it's about the experience, and it's about the niche of the needs of that industry. So I think with the QSR, it's really huge because it is about functional food. It's about um, the speed, the service, the convenience, all of those things, and it really solves a huge problem right now with staffing. And I think a change in the culture, a change with as the generations change. Like you said, there are many more opportunities for other types of work. Um, but while we still have people involved, of course, certainly that EX is still crucial. So how do you see that this expanding? Tell us a little bit, and for most of the, well, actually, we have viewers from around the world, but probably majority are in the U.S. About the Compass Group, and what your expansion and what your kind of trajectory is with that.
Yeah, so speaking of the Ohio conference, the other people on the panel with me, I think a great statement from the gentleman from White Castle was, this is a great iconic brand, 100-year-old family
Mhm.
business, and for them, automating a part of the kitchen, especially the least desirable parts of the job. And I think he made a great statement saying, I would rather have our customers interacting with our staff as opposed to our staff's back towards them working the fry basket. So if I can spend a few extra minutes engaging with our customers as a family business, as a 100-year-old iconic brand, that's a priority for us.
Yeah.
So taking away some of the mundane tasks from employees makes you a more attractive employer and makes for happier employees. But Joel, you keep saying something that I very firmly believe in, that great customer experience starts with the employees. Now, if you look at a typical quick service, full service restaurant with great front of the house staff, let's say they're trained really well, they're treated really well, and they're having a great time with their customers. But what if the back of the house falters? What if your food is not ready on time? It's undercooked. Your allergens weren't taken into considerations. So if your food part breaks down that equation of engagement with customers, no matter how good your service is, people are going to have a bad experience. So what if we make sure the back of the house always delivers, so the front of the house can focus on the customer engagement part? What if we can take away the uncertainty of cooking, mundane tasks, taking away some of the jobs that nobody wants to do, be it cleaning or working the fry basket? So we make a more pleasant environment, which is more predictable, and for better cooking and more accurate cooking, it
Mhm.
just makes that experience translate to the
Mhm.
customers so much better. So when we started talking to Compass Group, here's a institution that has universities and hospitals and office towers and senior living places. So their model of providing a service to this real estate requires a massive influx of employees and food management systems. And some of the environments are 24/7. So again, it's harder to staff people in jobs nobody likes to do, harder to staff people on the graveyard shift. And while the demand is there, how do you make that possible? How do you make your environment a better place to work? So for us, it was a great starting point partnership because here's a group with the captive real estate. Here's a group with feet already on the ground, and they already have the food infrastructure in place. That means in every state that we go into, I don't have to find a broccoli supplier because they already have it. So looking at captive
Mm.
real estate like airports, like universities and hospitals and office towers, we figured let us do what we do best, is focus on our robotics and AI, and let Compass do what they already do. So nothing out of their wheelhouse, or they
Mm.
would replenish the raw materials when the machine tells you to, and they would do the general maintenance from their existing manpower already on site. So it's a great benefit for Compass to utilize our technology to better service the needs of their clients and their customers, while not going out of their wheelhouse to do something that's never been done before. That's our job as a tech startup. So I think it was a symbiotic relationship, having the infrastructure of a large company like this, and that became really beneficial to us, by the way. The team from both financial reporting, health and food safety, and all that good
Mhm.
stuff got engaged with our team and our suppliers, making us in a much better position to launch in the next few weeks for our first location in a hospital in the Toronto area with
Mhm.
Compass.
Fantastic. That is so exciting. Well, so I was going to ask about the impact actually on the guest, the value versus experiential, but I think what you've just said, like really nails that because you're providing this fresh food option uh, any time of day at any location without you having to worry about the actual real estate. So it's just a win-win. It's a beautiful marriage, I think, between what they have and what you have, and providing both value and the experience as well, which is today people love to see that. And if it's okay, later I will post a comment in the comment section, the link to the video that you sent me that shows the machine and explains everything. Would that be okay for me to post that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So then everyone can really get a visual and a deep understanding of the beauty of this system and the fascination of how that works. So you're starting with Asian food and kind of the wok concept. As I remember, you explained to me that it's because of the heat and the turning and the ease of the way it's produced, that it's something that's perfect for this vending machine-ish type model. So can you explain a little more about what types of food that you offer, what someone can get now currently from your machine, and what the name of it is? And congratulations on launching in just a couple weeks. I can't wait to hear how that goes. But also, what could people look forward to in the future as you develop? What else is in development with the types of food that you would offer?
Yeah. So the other thing we realized was we're not selling robots; we're selling food, and it's important for us to be branded by cuisine type. You don't buy your butter chicken from a Chinese restaurant. So we wanted to be cognizant of the fact that while it's easy for us to do 100 different things, a customer really engages with the brand, and the brand needs to stand for something. So our business plan evolved as we went down. We realized that uh, we are providing a really interesting technology and a tool for either current brands or future brands. And let us focus on what we do best. Let the brand focus on what they do best. We started with Asian cuisine because it was probably the hardest thing for us to do. Like pizza is simple.
Hmm.
Asian food is difficult because of the variability of the raw materials. You have sloppy noodles, you have chunks of broccoli, you have flat snow peas, you have shredded carrots. You mentioned the word broccoli, you see my engineers shudder because that was the hardest thing for us to do. We invented our own sensor to be able to do some of this stuff. How do you accurately measure these weird shapes of food and make sure that we can cook it? The end result will be like the best chef you ever met has made the food for you. So we figured if we can do Asian, we can do anything. So the next iteration will probably be Mexican. But currently, our Asian machine can do Indian, I can do Italian, noodles and pasta and rice. Anything that's based on that, we can make those bowls. The next iteration most likely will be Middle Eastern, it'll be Mexican and Greek and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So with Compass, for example, they have an internal brand, Asian brand called Bok Choy. So Bok Choy will be the branded name of the machine, but powered by SJW Robotics. The Asian concept you see in the video, we called it Rowalk. That's a word we trademarked, the robotic walk. Won't apply to Italian food. So the company name is going to change at one point, but it'll be powered by SJW Robotics. So we'll partner with different brands, and that's our idea. Take established brands. They do what they do best. They have the recipes, they have their brand, they have the culinary team. They can do innovation on that part. We do the execution through our machine. So we're talking to a lot of the big brands that you're familiar with, and you're going to start seeing a bunch of these different brands powered by SJW Robotics. You'll be able to find them in airports and hospitals and universities and office towers.
Hmm.
Also, we've designed our system. We took inspiration from food manufacturing and food trucks. So basically, it's real estate agnostic. It can be put in any place. The self-contained system. All we need is a water line, a plumbing line, an electrical line, and you have your vending machine that's ready to produce great food for you. So that's sort of the approach we took in terms of by cuisine type, co-branded with existing brands, where we power the machine. So the other interesting thing about a holistic approach to automation is that we can really use data science and AI very effectively, both for predictive maintenance of the machine. Certain parts are being used more. Let's make sure the replacement part is in stock and the person to service it is around the corner when need be. but also on the food side and inventory management. Chicken's expiring in 24
Mhm.
hours. It can self-generate 25% of your pad thai. We know that there's an ice storm coming in Montreal. Sales are going to be low, so let's make sure we don't fill up the machine too much. Storm in Florida, tomato prices are 400%. Well, let's pivot to recipes that don't include tomatoes. And end of the day, because the machine is doing it, the customers can hyper customize the experience. The restaurateur, when somebody says, I don't want broccoli, can you switch this? I know the kitchen hates that person because you throw off
Yeah.
the for a robot, knock yourself out. So customize your life away, and nobody's going to complain and be angry, and there will be no mistakes. So all this stuff put together in a holistic machine allows us to really provide that great value, the great experience, the great customization, all that good stuff.
Oh my gosh. It's so brilliant. And I love your use of data science in there. Like the idea of, like you say, like, as a with chef background that I have, you cook broccoli very differently than you would a shredded carrot or something that's flat. And the fact that, timing and temperature and methodology, all those things are taken into consideration through AI is just, it's so exciting. It's so incredible, and that you do it so successfully. And I love, it's of course makes total sense. It's brilliant that you're basically letting everyone do their the 80/20 role again, right? You're going to the people, the 20% who's like, that is their brand, they know their food. Why get involved in all that? We don't need to recreate the wheel and try and come up with recipes. Let them do that, and just, you're always the by, like you're always powered by, right? SJW Robotics. um Ah, brilliant. It's very, very exciting. I really, I can't wait to just follow your journey and see how that goes, and hope that I can experience one sometime soon here in the US and the Austin area, or as I travel. And again, real estate agnostic absolutely makes so much sense. Real estate is so crazy expensive. Uh, we all know that McDonald's, right, is a real estate business, and they've made their money that way. But just think of all the things that go along with that, because for them, that model's different too, because the franchisee is the one who's responsible for that and paying in. But when you eliminate all these other little potential obstacles and do it in a way that is a benefit to the customer and their experience and customization, as you say, we've gotten so spoiled as customers, and that you make all that possible. It's really very cool, very, very exciting. It reminds me, just think about how quickly all this is changing. Last night, I was out to dinner with some friends, and there was an interesting conversation that someone talked about this, his new daughter-in-law, and that her work is in, and I forget the exact title, but it's something to do with like alternate universe hospitality. I was like, what? Like, what is that? I mean, yes, I see about alternate worlds when I watch Flash and other Marvel character movies and things, but like, really? And he said, yes, she's currently, like, she gives talks and consulting. And I'm like, so explain that. Like, I know where my head goes when I think about that. And he says, it's probably just what you're thinking, where on, out on the moon, or, in another area, another planet, that there's going to be hotels built and restaurants, and it's about creating hospitality in that environment. I'm like, but she's doing that currently, like, in how many years and what lifetime are we going to see that? And he said, oh no, they're projecting it. He said, I don't know the companies, but they're projecting that in like 2 or 3 years. Did you know anything about that? That blows my mind.
Yeah, there's a lot of chatter about uh, creating things for moon hotels and what Elon Musk's doing in Mars.
Right.
So these things are happening at a much faster rate. But if you look at a lot of the innovation in our industry, it really comes from NASA. It comes from the Army. So when these people are in remote locations in Afghanistan, and at the end of the day, you have your soldiers fighting their lives, they want to have a meal that they remember from back home. It needs to be
Yeah.
freshly made, whatever they want. How do you do that in a desert environment? So the innovation in be it shelf life, stable products, food coming out of a tube. So because of the limitations in these environments, NASA and the US Army are at the forefront of evolution in our industry. And by the way, that's the third pillar for us too. End of the day, as cool as my machine is, it's really keeping things cold, heating it, and plating it. So the innovation really needs to come from the culinary side. My investors and my advisory board include Tom Colicchio and Elizabeth Blau. And at one point that will become really important for us. How do we manipulate the input ingredients to make it fresher, tastier, longer shelf life, healthier? And having that culinary side innovation will be key to making this machine better and smarter. So all those things put together are really, really important. And that innovation, and even if it's Mars not happening for 50 years, the innovation starts today. It impacts our entire industry tomorrow.
Yeah, but I mean, from what he said with this whole Mars project, that it's like they're talking about it in the next 3 years or so, which I'm fascinated and excited to see. I can't imagine. I mean, I guess a hotel there, a lot of times there's minimum stays. Probably they have a week minimum or something, for those hotels. But really, really fascinating. Well, gosh, I could continue to talk for hours and hours as we have, but we are at the end of our time, actually longer than usual because it's just impossible to stop. There's so many interesting things. I would love to have you back on as things progress for you, to hear updates, to hear the exciting changes and what's going on, because you have the ability and you are really in tune and at the forefront of creating those innovations. And you respond to what's happening because of your data science, because of who you are in your just innovative, competitive, insightful approach, which is so fantastic. And that's what we need to lead us in an innovation in this space, which is ever changing. So Nipun, thank you so much for joining. And I really enjoy the conversation and learning about what you're up to. It's very exciting. I hope everyone will get to experience it soon.
Thank you, Jill. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and looking forward to our next encounter.
Sounds great. Thank you. So hang on a minute here for me. Thank you for joining today. Please share this episode. We are pre-recording because of availability. It will live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Share it to your peeps, because as you've heard, it's really on the forefront of what's going on. It's very, very interesting. Will change the QSR world and model without a doubt. And if you have any other ideas or innovations, or know someone you want me to interview, let me know. It's just really an exciting time in the food industry, in the F&B world. If you want to, I forgot to put this up there, I apologize, but if you want to reach Nipun, I will put this in the comments, and I'll list it later in the episode. I'll put it in the comments where you can reach him on LinkedIn if you want to have a conversation directly. So again, thank you for joining another episode of Celebrity Customer Experience, and we look forward to speaking to you again next time. Thank you.